Ma'am. Donald Trump's voice was not loud, but it cut through the sudden dead silence of the grand ballroom like a razor. We are here tonight to support children with cancer, not for your desperate political theater. Jasmine Crockett stood frozen, her sneer faltering as she realized her ambush was about to become her own public execution. The National Beacon of Hope Gala was one of those rare nights in Washington, D.C., where the political swords were supposed to be sheathed. Held in the breathtaking grand ballroom of the historic Mayflower Hotel, the event was a universe of crystal chandeliers, champagne flutes, and hushed, important conversations. Under the glittering lights, CEOs of Fortune 500 companies mingled with philanthropists, media moguls, and, of course, the political elite from both sides of the aisle. It was a temporary truce, a neutral ground dedicated to raising millions for pediatric cancer research. In a quiet corner of the room, far from the main stage, Donald J. Trump and Senator J.D. Vance were holding court with a small, but immensely influential group of industrial titans. There was no boisterous campaigning here. The tone was serious, the conversation centered on American revitalization. Trump, in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, gestured with a quiet intensity, speaking about bringing manufacturing back to the Rust Belt. Vance, looking sharp and focused, added precise details about the economic policies that could make it happen, his deep knowledge of the issues evident in every word. They weren't just politicians, they were a team, a CEO and his top strategist laying out a vision. They commanded the space not with volume, but with an aura of purpose and strength. Across the room, Representative Jasmine Crockett watched them. She wasn't here for the charity. Her eyes, sharp and restless, darted around the room, not with the easy grace of a guest, but with the predatory focus of a hunter. Dressed in a gown that shimmered aggressively under the lights, she radiated a discontented energy. She saw Trump and Vance, saw the respect they were being shown, and a knot of bitter resentment tightened in her gut. This was her city, her turf, and they were being treated like heroes. Her eyes landed on a two-man camera crew from a liberal online outlet she knew well. They were pretending to get candid shots of the gala, but their gazes kept flicking back to her. A subtle, almost imperceptible nod was all it took. This was no coincidence. It was a planned ambush. With the camera crew now shuffling into position behind her, Crockett began her approach. She moved through the crowd like a torpedo, a fixed, malicious smile plastered on her face. The donors speaking with Trump and Vance saw her coming, and their own smiles faltered, a sudden awkwardness descending upon the group. Vance noticed the shift first, his eyes narrowing slightly as he saw Crockett bearing down on them, the camera lens glinting over her shoulder. He subtly squared his shoulders, ready for the inevitable confrontation. Crockett didn't bother with pleasantries. She pushed into the circle, her voice loud, sharp, and dripping with contempt, designed to be heard by everyone in the vicinity. "Well, well," she began, letting out a derisive laugh. "If it isn't the great Donald Trump and his most loyal puppet." The words struck the air and hung there, venomous and ugly. The chatter in the ballroom, which had been a low hum, died instantly. One by one, heads turned. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. In the space of a heartbeat, over 100 pairs of eyes were locked on their corner of the room. The silence was absolute. Cell phones began to emerge from pockets and purses, their small red recording lights blinking on like malevolent fireflies. Jasmine Crockett's smile widened. This was exactly what she wanted. A public spectacle. She directed her full scorn at Vance. "Tell me, Senator," she sneered, "does he pull your strings every morning? Or do you just wake up knowing exactly what he wants you to say? It must be exhausting having no thoughts of your own." J.D. Vance's jaw was tight, a muscle twitching in his cheek. He was a brawler from Ohio, and every instinct screamed at him to fire back, to dismantle her with the cold, hard facts he had at his command. But before he could utter a single word, a calm, heavy hand rested on his forearm. Donald Trump hadn't flinched. He hadn't moved. He simply stood there, his eyes fixed on Crockett, not with anger, but with an expression of profound disappointment, as if observing a misbehaving child. He gave Vance's arm a slight, reassuring squeeze, a silent message, "I've got this." He then turned his full attention to Crockett, When he spoke, his voice was not the rally stage boom many expected. It was low, controlled, and carried an authority that seemed to suck the remaining air out of the room. "Ma'am," he began, the single word dripping with dismissal. "We are here tonight to support children with cancer, not for your desperate political theater." He let the statement hang, a powerful indictment that immediately framed her as the villain. He had seized the moral high ground in a single sentence. "She was the one desecrating a sacred event," he continued, his gaze unwavering. "But since you've brought your camera crew all the way over here to ask, let me be perfectly clear for them, and for you." He took a small step forward, shielding Vance slightly. "I didn't choose JD because he's a puppet. I chose him because he's a warrior. I chose him because he has more integrity in his little finger than your entire caucus has combined." A quiet gasp rippled through the onlookers. The raw, protective power in his voice was stunning. "You see," Trump went on, his tone becoming even more intense, more personal. "This man remembers the names of towns in Ohio and Pennsylvania that your party has spent the last 30 years pretending don't exist. He fights for the forgotten men and women of this country, the ones you fly over on your way from New York to LA. He wants to bring their jobs back, to restore their dignity." He gestured vaguely toward Crockett. "You talk about puppets. Puppets just repeat talking points. Warriors fight for people. That's not puppetry. That's called patriotism. It's a concept you and your friends might want to look up sometime." It was a verbal kill shot. Clean, brutal, and delivered with the precision of a surgeon. And then, in a move of pure strategic genius, he did the one thing she never expected. He dismissed her. Completely. He turned his back on her, leaving her standing alone in the circle of silence. He faced the stunned donors, his expression softening instantly, the warmth returning to his eyes as if the interruption had never happened. "Now, John," he said, his voice returning to a conversational tone as he addressed the CEO of a major steel corporation. "You were telling me about the new research wing this charity is funding. It sounds incredible. Tell me more." It was over. Crockett was left standing in the wake of his words, her face a mask of fury and humiliation. Her camera crew looked lost, the lens now pointed at Trump's back. She had come for a viral clip of her owning the former president. Instead, he had turned her into a sideshow, a rude, classless interloper, and had then simply erased her from the conversation. She stood there for a few seconds, speechless, before turning on her heel and storming away, the sea of onlookers parting before her. The tension in the room broke. A quiet murmur of approval spread, and then, from a table nearby, someone began to applaud. It was a slow, deliberate clap, which was quickly joined by others, a wave of support washing over the corner of the room. The videos, of course, went viral within minutes, but they weren't the videos Jasmine Crockett had envisioned. The clips from her pet media outlet were overwhelmed by dozens of videos from the phones of the gala's attendees. They were titled, "Class ACT, Trump Shuts Down Heckler at Charity Event," and a masterclass in presidential composure. The narrative was set in stone. Jasmine Crockett, driven by arrogance and malice, had tried to create a scene and had been effortlessly put in her place. Donald Trump was praised for his powerful, presidential defense of his ally and his refusal to be dragged into the mud. And J.D. Vance, by saying nothing at all, had never looked stronger. He was no puppet. He was a man worthy of the loyalty and fierce protection of a leader. They had faced a public ambush and had won a total, undeniable victory, not by shouting louder, but by standing taller on the unshakable ground of moral and strategic superiority. What did you think of the way Trump handled that public confrontation? Was it the perfect response? Let us know your take on the climax of the story. And for more narratives like this, make sure to subscribe.